Hi, I'm Jordan Morgan, and I'll be playing a session of 5-10 Omaha high-low 6-max. Alright, here we go. I'm posting my first blind in this 5-10 limit Omaha high-low game. These games are usually pretty loose and fairly passive. As you can see, we get 2 limpers here. This is not a great hand, so we'll just check, take a flop. I don't really flop anything, just flop a pair of 6s and no low draw. Just get out of the way here with Omaha high-low is a game where you want to be making nut hands. You want to be drawing to the nut low or close to it, or to the nut high or close to it. You don't really want to be playing hands, even though I would have made 3 6s here, you don't really want to be playing hands like middle pair, or even just an overpair. Hands like that aren't very good in this game. See here, it's hard for this hand to make the nuts very often, and it's never going to make the nut low, so probably won't play this even for a single half bet when it gets to us. Omaha high-low is a great game, though. It's a game where you can play a lot of hands, and you can really get in there and have some fun and mix it up. And, you know, there's a lot of different styles that you can play to be successful in this game, but the one thing that you have to make sure you do is play good hands pre-flop. And it's also a game where position matters, just like all the other games. And while this hand can't draw to a low, with these high-only hands, you can sometimes raise, especially if you're on the button in the first in and you have the initiative. It's okay to play the high-only hands as long as you're not going to be giving away a lot of chips whenever a low gets there. I'm going to stay aggressive with the overpair, and he might just be calling us down with nothing here. Here again, I think the overpair is good, and the low hasn't gotten there. I'm going to bet and probably give up if he raises, because it's likely he has the 10, but you always want to be aggressive in this game, and there are spots you'll just be calling down with your big draws and that sort of thing, but usually you want to be aggressive. Like here, I'm going to take the initiative with an ace-3 suited. You know, any ace-2 suited you're going to play, and most ace-3 suited, especially from the cutoff. And here we'd flop a really big draw. We've got a open-ender, a backdoor flush draw, and the second nut low draw. With 2 players, you're going to want to be aggressive and get chips in the pot with a hand that big. Now we pick up the nut flush draw on the turn, and player's not showing any aggression, so we'll keep the initiative here and give us a chance to bluff on the river if we don't get there. When we get check raise, we're just going to call with all of our draws and hope to make a low for half. Now we've got the second nut low, and just pay him off and hope he doesn't have an ace-deuce with the better hand. You'll run into all kinds of players in these low-limit games. People will turn over all kinds of hands. You want to have a reason for raising it pre-flop in Omaha high-low. Otherwise, you should just limp. Here, this isn't a very good flop. We just got the 1 pair, and we've only got a 1-card low draw. It's not that solid. But still, to raise pre-flop, you want to either be raising to isolate and to narrow down the number of players in the flop, or you want to be raising to get more money in the flop, in pre-flop, in a hand that plays well in a big pot, like on the button with like an ace-deuce-3 double suited, and there's a bunch of limpers. Those are the kind of spots where you want to raise. Here, this is a hand that wants to see a cheap flop and make a nut low, and it's not going to play well heads up, which is what you would be wanting to raise under the gun. So you just want to limp in with these hands, but you're never going to fold an ace-deuce in Omaha high-low unless you have trips. This is a great flop for our hand. We flop an open-ender and the nut low draw. We'll bet with no one else betting. And in Omaha high-low, you want to bet your draws very strongly, especially when you're drawing to the nuts. Now I've got the nut low locked up, or I could get counterfeited, but I've got the nut low locked up, and I've got what can be called a free roll to the high hand, and so you're going to play that very aggressively. I probably would have 3-bet had he raised me in that situation. Just take a free flop with a pretty average hand. See, it's a weird spot. In a full table, you're not going to like your little to medium flushes very much. But when it's only 6-handed, a lot of the time these hands will be good. And a good way to play them is to bet out, and then if you're raised, you can give the guy credit for a hand, and it's just hard to raise on a 3-flush board without having a better flush. So, but I mean, a guy might call down with kings and tens or a set of tens, but if they raise, you kind of have to give them credit for it, and you don't want to be putting in too many bets with non-nut hands. And that's the other thing about that spot is you don't have any outs to move up. Your hand's not going to get any better. It's only going to be a 5-high flush. This is a 3-4 is not a very good low draw. Even though the hand's double suited with the pair, it's not very strong. Just fold that from the small blind. This is a spot where we've got a button and we've got a decent low draw here with the 3 low cards and a pair, so you don't really want to be raising. There's no reason to get more money in the flop or to try and narrow down the field with this hand, so you just want to limp and play post-flop. That's so much of this game is post-flop play that you can get away with a lot pre-flop, but you want to have some certain guidelines that you follow. No reason to call with just a backdoor low draw. Here we saw Misty Rain call 2 bets on the flop and then fold a turn. This is a very drawy flop, but so I mean, yeah, with the board pairing on the turn, it's kind of hard for many draws to continue. It's fairly a standard. It's kind of standard for people to call with their draws and fold when the board pairs. So it's a good spot to bluff. That was where I had ace deuce suited here and raised. It's from the cutoff, and when the games get shorter, you want to be raising more spots because there's less value in limping to induce others into the pot. This is a hand that's not very good. Just fold that. Earlier, the guy turned over I think it was 9, 10, Jack, King, and sometimes you'll see people playing those hands, and when you see it, you want to take note of when they're playing it. Good players will play those hands sometimes on the button when it's folded to them. Bad players will be calling raises with those hands and putting in a lot of bets with high-only type hands in spots where there might be a low or at least a low draw. So you really want to pay attention to the hands people are playing, how they're playing their hands, and their different kinds of hands. You want to know if a guy is being aggressive with his draws or only aggressive with his made hands or only aggressive with his high-only hands or high locks, or you want to figure out the hands that a guy is playing aggressively. Here is a very premium Omaha high-low hand. Getting the aces with the 3 is any aces with the 3 is going to be great, and you're going to be wanting to get in all the bets possible pre-flop. Some people really will overplay aces in this game. It's kind of a carryover from Hold'em. This is a spot where I've got the nut low and a pair of aces. I'm just going to try and get in more bets. But really, even with aces, you still want to have some sort of a low draw in order to be aggressive with them. Even a 5 or a 6 is probably good enough, but if you've got like ace, queen, 9, it's really not that great of a hand because you should treat it the same as a 9, 10, jack, king, double suited type hand where you're playing high only, and so you should only be playing those hands in position. A lot of people will never fold a pair of aces pre-flop in this game, but there are a lot of spots where you should. See, this is another type of hand that I would like to play when the games get shorter and in position, is hands that have high value and low value. So a hand like King, 6-3, while 6-3 is not great and Kings aren't great, combined in the short-handed games where not a lot of people are going to be going to the flop, the hand has a lot of value and is usually fairly straightforward. Here we get a great flop and you just want to hammer away when you've got the best of it. If you've got a really big draw or the best hand, you want to be getting in a lot of bets, which is really what we're going to go after here. Backdoor low draw gets here. There's no reason to slow down. We'll get in all the bets that let us. Now when he raises here, I would put him on some sort of a low draw. Probably it might even be a low wrap, like an ace-2-5 with hearts, but my hand has too much equity and scoop equity that I want to get in all of the money possible. Now it's a pretty bad card. There's no reason to bet now, but I will check and call because he would have to have 5, 6 or hearts, and he doesn't have hearts all the time. In this spot, you want to look at the size of the pot, and with there being $100 and his bet being 10, you're getting 11.5 to 1. So he only has to be bluffing 1 in 11 times for you to make the call. But and also with this being a split pot game, you might only be calling to get 10 or to get back half of that. So he only has to be bluffing 1 in 5 times. And I think that he won't always have hearts there, but unfortunately he did this time. And here, as I stated my read on the turn was that he had a low draw and a heart draw, and you'll notice that he did have the ace-deuce for the nut low draw and the heart draw. And people will get aggressive in spots like that where they have multiple ways to make the nuts and to get chips out of the pot. But with a hand like top set that is so one-dimensional, you really just want to be getting in as much money as you can when you're ahead and then slowing down if there's a chance your opponent has beaten your hand. Not everyone is going to raise the nut low draw and the nut hearts in his situation, but a lot of people will. I mean, it's kind of hard to judge because I've only played a few hands with him, but that's definitely a spot where I'm going to raise a lot of the time. It's kind of bad because I've bet into him twice, so I'm exhibiting a lot of strength, and you kind of want to have a reason to believe your opponent might be weak in a spot like that, so that you want to have a little bit of value in winning the pot without making the best hand on the river, and I don't think he had that there, so it's probably not the best spot to be raising. This is a spot where I've got a bad low draw on one pair, no reason to get involved. So here's the ace-4-5. It's not quite as strong as an ace-2 or 3, but it's strong enough, and we're down to 4-handed now, so we got a pretty good flop here. We got the second nut low draw and a gut shot that would give us the lock nuts, but not enough to be betting. This guy's got the betting lead, and he's been really aggressive, so there's no reason to be putting in a raise here. We're just calling, hoping to hit a hand. Now we've turned a pair and the second nut low draw, but it's still not strong enough to be betting. These are the spots where you've got a hand that's likely to be good, especially in a 4-handed game, but not good enough that a worse hand can call you. But then once it checks around, now we've got aces up and a live 5. It's pretty likely someone has a 3 that'll beat us for the low, but it's pretty unlikely that someone will have a 3 and a better high hand. So we can go ahead and bet our high hand for value here. And we fold it out one player, and the other player calls, and we split it. Sam will complete with a suited ace-5 and some middle cards. I don't really see any reason to bluff here. There are some spots where you can get away with thinking your opponent might be weak, but all right, now that this checked around, this is exactly one of those spots where either of these guys would have been betting on the flop if they had a flush. So with 2 pair, there's a decent chance it's good. And we're going to go ahead and stick in a bet. It looks like we might have missed for a check raise on the flop, and it's pretty likely he just had a low draw on the turn. So it's very likely he's folding to our bet there. But we don't really want to check and let him call it, or let him show down a hand like queens and deuces that he might fold to a bet with. So we bet. So just with 4 of the same suit and only an ace-5 for low, I'm not going to play that from under the gun, even 5-handed. Really, the ranges you want to be playing are under the gun. You'll play, you really want your hand to have more going for it than just one thing. That hand only had ace-5 for low, so it's not that good. If a hand was like ace-king-jack-5, you would play it because it has some high value and it has a decent low hand. Under the gun, you're going to be a little bit tighter though, and so you want your hands, you might play ace-king-jack-5 suited, and then as it goes around closer to the button, you'll widen that a little bit. Other hands that I really like to play are hands where you have 4 low cards up to like a 7, like a 7-5-3-2, where it's possible to flop, lots of pairs along with low draws. Here I've got the queen 7 3 deuce, and with all these bets in there, I'm getting 7-1. I'll take a flop, and even though this hand's very weak, that's just a spot where I'm going to try and get in cheap and make some sort of a nut low. Bottom 2 pair is not a very strong hand. There's a flush draw, there's a low draw, so even if our hand's good right now, there's a lot of outs to beat it. This is a spot where a lot of players will lose a lot of money getting in too many bets with the bottom 2 pair, but in a spot like this where there's so many cards that can beat you, and you could already be drawing dead right now, you kind of just want to get out of the way and let the other people, let them fight out for the pot. You want to have the initiative in this game and be pounding people with your good hands, and then when you don't have a good hand, just get out of the way unless you're absolutely sure that they're going to fold. All right, so session didn't go so well today. We didn't get a lot of great starting hands. Usually when you play, you'll get more hands to play and get in better spots where you make the nuts more often. But today, the other players are getting better cards, and that happens. But as long as you maintain a tight, aggressive strategy, only playing hands with good value, it shouldn't take you too long to be winning at Omaha high-low.